This island is so deadly, it's illegal to step foot on it. Hidden in plain sight, a place where death waits in every shadow. Venomous snakes, man-eating crocodiles, and a tribe that murders outsiders on sight. One man ignored the warnings, and what happened next will haunt you forever. Stay until the end. The final revelation will leave you speechless. There is a place on Earth where stepping onto the soil is a gamble with death. A lush, deceiving paradise surrounded by the rolling blue of the South Atlantic. Its beauty is a trap. The name isn't marked on brochures or travel blogs. You won't see influencers posing there, because they can't, because they won't, and if they did, they wouldn't return. It's called Ilha de Queimada Grande, more notoriously known as Snake Island, and it's the one location the Brazilian Navy has sealed shut to the public. They didn't just lock it away because it's remote. They did it because the inhabitants, thousands of them, are armed with a venom that dissolves flesh from the inside out. Eduardo Antonio Fonseca didn't believe the warnings. In 1997, he was a young man from the mainland, a fisherman by trade, and a dreamer by nature. One evening, while drinking with his cousin, he claimed he'd sail to Snake Island and prove the legends were nothing but overblown fishermen's tales. "A snake on every meter?" he laughed. "I'll come back with a bag of bananas and a story." What he came back with, however, was far more gruesome. He never made it to the mainland again. His boat was found a day later, drifting near the island's jagged shoreline. Blood had dried and flaked onto the wooden slats. His body, grotesquely twisted, lay collapsed at the bow, his eyes frozen wide, jaw dislocated as if he had died mid-scream. A post-mortem would later reveal over a dozen puncture wounds, concentrated around his arms, thighs, and ribs. The life-taker, both obvious and terrifying, Bothrops insularis, the golden lancehead viper. A snake so deadly, so biologically specialized, that it exists nowhere else on the planet but on that one godforsaken rock. Scientists say it evolved in isolation, with venom 3 to 5 times more potent than that of its mainland relatives. On Snake Island, the snakes slither not just on land, but in trees above, below, beside. There's no escape. You're never more than a meter from death. A Navy lighthouse once stood there, manned briefly by a keeper named Augusto Braga and his family. In 1923, they were stationed to maintain the light until they stopped sending reports. A supply team found them all dead, sprawled in beds and hallways, their faces contorted in agony, blood soaked into mattresses and walls. The only signs of forced entry were claw-sized gashes on open windows. They never stationed another soul again. The light was automated. From then on, only researchers with government clearance and steel nerves were allowed, and even they returned trembling. Or not at all. But even Snake Island pales in comparison to the blood-soaked mangrove swamps of Burma's Ramree Island. A battleground during the dying months of World War II, its history holds an incident so horrifying, it is literally recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest massacre caused by animals. The numbers are staggering. Of the approximately 1,000 Japanese soldiers who tried to cross that swamp in 1945, barely 500 emerged. Not because of bombs, not because of bullets, but because of crocodiles. Lieutenant Shoichi Matsumoto was among the first to enter the swamp during the retreat. Japanese forces were attempting to regroup with a battalion on the other side of Ramree. What separated them was a 10-mile stretch of fetid, mosquito-infested marshland. The British refused to pursue, knowing full well what lay inside. Saltwater crocodiles, hundreds of them, the largest, most aggressive crocodilians on Earth. Predators that had thrived in the thick mangrove channels for centuries. And now they were hungry. Matsumoto's last entry in his journal, later recovered, blood-stained and torn, reads, "There is movement beneath the water, large shapes, eyes at the surface. It watches." That night, the swamp echoed with the shrieks of men who had faced hell. The British soldiers stationed at the perimeter spoke of hearing human screams in waves. Shouts, fire weapon sounds, silence. Shouts, fire weapon sounds, silence. One after another. It wasn't a battle. It was a culling. The crocodiles struck in the dark. massive, armored reptiles up to 23 feet long, some weighing over 2,000 pounds. They did not harm to defend. They attacked to feed. Limbs were torn from torsos, men pulled beneath the surface, their screams replaced by wet thrashing. Only 20 Japanese soldiers made it out and into British hands that night. They spoke of glowing eyes in every direction, of comrades vanishing without warning, consumed by monsters whose jaws shattered bone. These were not isolated attacks. These were coordinated ambushes by nature's most perfected life-takers. Ramree Island remains largely uninhabited. Locals speak of it in hushed tones. They say the crocodiles still patrol the waters, still remember the blood. And if you think a place doesn't need venom or muscle to be lethal, then you haven't heard of North Sentinel Island. A speck of land in the Bay of Bengal, cloaked in jungle and mystery, protected not by fences or fortresses, but by the oldest human instincts, territorial rage, primal violence, and an unyielding rejection of the outside world. The Sentinelese people, fewer than 200 by modern estimates, have lived on that island for over 60,000 years. And for every single one of those years, they have refused contact with outsiders. Those who've tried have died. But in 2018, a man named John Allen Chow believed he could be the exception. John was not a fool. He was a missionary, young, bright, and obsessed with spreading the gospel. To him, the Sentinelese were not a threat, but a mission, a people he believed God had placed in his path to save. He trained for months, learning survival techniques, disease management, and minimal contact strategies. And then he paid fishermen to smuggle him close. They warned him, sternly, repeatedly, that this place was off limits for a reason, that the last men to set foot there were never seen again. John didn't care. On November 15th, he tried to land. From his kayak, he waved his arms, smiled, shouted greetings. A boy raised a bow and fired. The arrow struck his Bible. The message couldn't have been clearer. He turned back, but he wasn't deterred. The next morning, he tried again, this time without a boat. He swam the mile to shore, barefoot, unarmed, hopeful. The fishermen never saw him return. A day later, they spotted figures on the beach. They were dragging something, no, someone, a body, John's. The Sentinelese, painted in ash and ochre, danced and shouted as they carried the body inland. Authorities wanted to retrieve his remains, but not even the Indian military dares set foot there. North Sentinel is not just a forbidden island. It is a fortress guarded by memory. Every man who has ever landed there has met the same end. Unalived not by disease or snakes or monsters, but by humans who have chosen to remain uncontacted, who see the modern world not as progress, but as poison. Even aerial drone footage has shown Sentinelese warriors taking aim at the sky with their bows, ready to unalive what they cannot comprehend. Researchers like Dr. Madhavi Badwar argue that the Sentinelese are not untouched, but untouchable. Their culture, preserved in a vacuum of time, thrives precisely because of their violent refusal to adapt. They are prehistoric ghosts, living echoes of a world before agriculture, before language, before fire itself. They make flame only by lightning. They hunt with stone-tipped spears, and they unalive without hesitation. The death of John Allen Chow shocked the world. To some, he was a martyr, to others, a fool. But everyone agreed on one thing: no one should go back. North Sentinel isn't just a restricted zone. It is a mirror into humanity's oldest instincts, and it is unquestionably a place you can't go. Yet, men still try. The thrill of the forbidden is too intoxicating, the allure of discovering what others are forbidden to see. But in all three of these places, Snake Island, Ramree, and North Sentinel, nature and isolation have formed boundaries stronger than any wall. These are not tourist traps. They are traps, period. So the next time someone says, "You can go anywhere if you try hard enough," remember the names: Eduardo Antonio Fonseca, Lieutenant Shoichi Matsumoto, and John Allen Chow. Men who tried, men who went, and men who never came back. Would you step foot on an island crawling with unseen death? Would you wade into a swamp where the water itself devours men? Or face a tribe that sees outsiders as threats to be erased? Which of these three places chilled you the most? And which one would you never risk visiting? Let us know in the comments. What would you do if given the chance? And don't forget, subscribe for more real stories that challenge the line between bravery and madness.